Lately, someone asked me about Carl Jung's concept of the anima, or when it relates to females, the animus. Now, on this channel, I'm not here to teach the philosophies of pagans. Nevertheless, the philosophies of pagans are used in daily life by governments, by corporations, and unfortunately by churches also to control people's behavior. And predators also use the pagan philosophies to prey on their targets, because pagan philosophies contain elements of truth. Even though they're not the truth, they contain elements of truth in them. Now, about the anima or animus, when it relates to a female, anima when it relates to a man. And it comes down to the following. I'm going to keep it very short. Every human being is born as a baby. That's obvious, okay? So every human being is dependent on their mother for the first several months of their life. Especially first months are very important because you can't do anything on your own. And men develop an intense attachment, emotional attachment to their mothers. Girls do, women do that also. But with girls, there's this deep need for a father. Now, males also have a need for father, don't get me wrong, but with females, this need is very intense. Because remember, females are transmitters of male energy. That's how they are designed. So, from a very young age, that means when they're in, let's say, between 1 to 6 years old, they need to have a stable father figure around them for them to get used to the intensity of male energy. Because that's their purpose, to transfer and process male energy. So they need to have a good imprint on their soul and on their brains of a healthy male. With men, it's a bit different. Men get an imprint both from the male figures around them and from their mothers. When it relates to females, the imprint they got from their father is what they carry around them for the rest of their lives. And if that imprint was a negative one, they ought to be delivered from it, they ought to be healed from it. With males, if the imprint they got from their mother was negative, similarly, they need to be healed from it. Now, when a man received a bad imprint from his mother, this does not cause immediate direct dysfunction later in life. And what I mean is the dysfunction is not that visible immediately. The dysfunction will likely be that the man has a very low self-esteem, that he feels unworthy, this chronic sense of unworthiness. Why? Because when he was a little baby, when he was completely dependent, he could not rely on the maternal figure. Let's say the maternal figure was a drug addict, or she was bipolar, whatever. So her quality of feminine energy was not healthy. So if that is what that man had while growing up, then he will still grow and become a man, because and become an adult man, because he's a man, because he can't become anything else, but he will have this toxic insecurity that will haunt him. And consequently, his soul will long for compensation for his toxic insecurity. And he may even confuse this toxic insecurity for this natural male inadequacy. Because as I mentioned before, every human male has an inherent inadequacy in them that's natural, that they need to accept, they need to embrace. That's how the Most High designs them. If a man had a healthy imprint from both his mother and his father, then he will not have much problems with his natural inadequacy. But if a man had a toxic maternal figure in the first few years, because the first few years are the most important, because in the first few years, you just download everything that's thrown at you. You don't have a filter called the mind that's developed yet to process things. So if the maternal energy he received was of bad quality, it will haunt them in the form of depression and a toxic insecurity. And this urge for compensation will be very big in him. Now, pagan businessmen know this. They know that there are a lot of men out there that are wounded by their upbringing because their mothers were not in a good shape, mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically. They know that this is quite common. And they know, therefore, there are many adult men that suffer from toxic insecurity. And they know that the urge for compensation is very big in those men. So what happens is that the pagan businessmen, who are men themselves, they understand how men think, they come with products that will trigger this infantile need for a secure mother figure. And by triggering this need, they attach that individual to their product. Similarly, when it relates to females, when the pagan businessman wants to attach a group of females to their product, they will trigger the infantile need for a secure father figure in them. Why are they doing this? Because they know it will work. Because this need is on the unconscious level. It's not something you think about. It's not something that you can see about yourself. And it's not even something others can see. But those that have knowledge of human soul, they can sense it, they can detect it, they can see it. So that's what the animus or anima of Carl Jung comes down to. And don't get things twisted. Those pagan businessmen, they're fond of those pagan philosophies because those pagan philosophies is what was teaching them how to control the masses. Now, when it comes to the animus or anima, they make several representations of it. Because not everyone was wounded to the same extent or in the same context. For example, you have the femme fatale. That's an archetype that was used in France. Actually, it was used for centuries, but it became popular in modern media, though to Hollywood. The femme fatale is an archetype of a female that's toxic, but at the same time, she offers a promise of maternal security. Now, this image of the femme fatale, it works on many men, especially men that use wealth as compensation. Because wealth, or better, having a lot of cash, is often the form of compensation that men crave. Because a lot of men think if they have a lot of cash, then they are a real man. They're based masculinity on their paycheck. It's a common thing that has happened throughout history. For such men, the femme fatale is the excellent image to trigger them. For other men, the femme fatale is a horrible archetype, so then they use the good girl archetype, which signifies the need for maternal security that they never had. That's what the good girl archetype comes down to. And this archetype is also used frequently, and it works. Then you also have the bad girl archetype, and this one is often used to trigger men who think that they haven't accomplished a lot. They are not then triggered into this role of a savior, think that they need to save this individual. And this refers back to when they were a kid, when their mothers were out of line and they thought it was their fault that their parents were out of line. But it was their fault. So this self-blame is triggered in the man by this bad girl archetype. For females, you have things as the bad boy archetype, which refers to the need for stable masculinity that they never had. straight up. It can either be due to an absent father figure or a father figure that was there but he was quite distant. This may trigger them into seeking masculine energy in an intense, unhealthy way. So they are chasing intense masculine energy that's often toxic, thinking that they can fix the men. That's why that image works on them. It's those their wrong relationships they had with their fathers. Then you have the Prince Charming archetype, and that's the most dangerous one. The Prince Charming archetype, it triggers females that don't trust masculine energy, or they don't know what masculine energy is. When a female doesn't know what masculine energy is, she can't operate in her purpose because she is a transmitter of masculine energy. So when she doesn't know what masculine energy is, or when she doesn't trust masculine energy because of the first imprint she got from males, which came from her father, was a bad one or an absent one or maybe an abusive one, she then will develop this longing for what's similar to her. So she will crave a man with feminine energy. And that's an abomination because that doesn't exist. Eventually, she'll be disappointed in all the men she gets involved with, whether it's on a sexual level or just on a friendship level, because there is no such thing as a man with feminine energy. It does not exist. But then you have Prince Charming. Prince Charming is an abomination. It's based on Apollo. I've spoken about it before in a video I made almost a year ago. And Prince Charming is a man that has a strong feminine emission that is almost motherly. Because females that often have a bad imprint of masculinity also have mother issues, in the sense that the quality of maternal energy they received was bad. Because think about it. If the parent had this kid were out of line and the masculine energy was bad, that means that the woman that gave birth to the child also transmitted bad masculine energy. So she also has a bad maternal imprint. Such women are often way too dependent on their mothers when they're older. You can see that a lot. It sometimes is as if they're an extension of their mothers. And that can be quite creepy. Anyway, they long for a man with feminine emission. Now, the only men out there that may appear to have a feminine emission are demon-possessed men or men that are predators. And in some cases, men that reject women. Healthy men will not have a feminine-like energy field. They will not. So that's why Prince Charming is so effective as an archetype. That's why Disney is so successful, because they make use of those archetypes to trigger the traumas in the conscious of people. Now, why am I speaking about this? It's important to understand all of this, because then you can understand people's behavior. Then you will also understand why corporations, governments, and those institutions do what they do. And here's another thing. Those pagan businessmen that run Disney, that run Hollywood, that run all those corporations that shape people's behavior, they know all of this. Haven't you noticed that in many movies, they put, first of all, in Hollywood, there are many covert transgenders, but I already spoken about that. Have you noticed that in many of those movies, they put men in a debased role? Instead of putting men in the role of stable caretakers and stable providers, they put men in the role of dumb ass, how do you say it in English again? They put men in the role of dumb fools. And in those scenes, women often treat the men like trash. You often find this in movies. Why is that? Because the pagan businessmen who run those corporations and who also direct those movies, they know that a lot of females have resentments towards men. So when they put those scenes in their movies, they are triggering the resentment that many women have. And because the resentment of those women are triggered, they feel acknowledged. And this feeling of acknowledgement will attach them to their brand. So if it's a Disney movie, they'll be attached to Disney because they feel acknowledged deep down inside by Disney. That's how it works. When you know pagan philosophy, when we know pagan psychology, you'll understand all of this. Unfortunately, most people don't understand pagan psychology. I'm not telling them to go into pagan psychology, but when you understand pagan psychology, you'll understand all of this. Well, it's important to know all of this so you know what's going on around you. Now, this does not excuse negative behavior from people, because people need deliverance, but it does explain why people do what they do. So one thing believers can do is to create fiction or create movies or create entertainment that debunks all those worldly archetypes. You're not going to deny the worldly archetypes, they are there, but you're going to debunk them by showing them what they really are. Well, that's all for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.